As a historian, I've always loved decoding ancient scriptures. The thrill of discovering secrets from the past was what drove me. So, when I found an old, dusty manuscript in the basement of the university library, I couldn't resist. It was written in a language I didn't recognize, and I spent weeks deciphering it. Little did I know, I was about to unleash a curse that would turn my life into a nightmare. One evening, as I was poring over the final passages, I felt a sudden chill. The air around me grew cold, and the lights flickered. My heart pounded, but I brushed it off and continued reading. The text spoke of a curse placed on my ancestors for their darkest deeds. The words warned that if the curse was unleashed, those deeds would come to life, and only by resolving their unfinished business could the curse be broken. I laughed nervously, not taking it seriously. But then, the ground beneath me trembled, and the room went dark. When the lights came back on, I wasn't in my study anymore. I was standing in a dimly lit forest, the air thick with fog. Shadows moved between the trees, and I felt eyes watching me. Panic set in as I realized this was no dream. I had brought the curse to life. I started walking, my breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. Suddenly, I saw figures ahead, men and women in old-fashioned clothing, their faces twisted in anger and sorrow. They were my ancestors, and they looked all too real. One by one, they stepped forward, their eyes filled with torment. The first was a man named Elias, who had betrayed his best friend for a handful of gold. His friend's ghost appeared beside him, showing the wounds of his betrayal. Elias spoke, his voice hollow. "You must find the gold and return it to my friend's family, or I will haunt you forever." Trembling, I agreed, and just as suddenly as they had appeared, they vanished. The forest shifted, and I found myself in a decrepit old house. The air was thick with the smell of decay. I searched the house, every creak of the floorboards sending shivers down my spine. After what felt like hours, I found a hidden compartment with a small, dusty bag of gold coins. I clutched it tightly, feeling a glimmer of hope. The scene changed again, and I was back in the forest. Elias and his friend reappeared. I handed over the gold, and his friend's spirit finally looked at peace. Both figures faded away, leaving me alone once more. But I knew it wasn't over. Another ancestor, a woman named Margaret, stepped forward. Her face was etched with sorrow. She had poisoned a rival out of jealousy, and her rival's ghost stood beside her, eyes full of pain. "You must find her family and beg for their forgiveness," Margaret said, tears streaming down her face. I nodded, determined to end this nightmare. The forest dissolved, and I was in an old village. I asked around, my voice shaking, until I found the descendants of Margaret's rival. I told them everything, my heart heavy with guilt. They listened, and after what felt like an eternity, they forgave her. Margaret and her rival's ghost appeared one last time, smiling before disappearing. The forest returned, darker than before. I knew I was running out of time. The next eclipse was only hours away. The last ancestor, a boy named Thomas, appeared. He had accidentally started a fire that killed his entire family. His parents' spirits stood beside him, their eyes filled with sadness. "You must save the children in the burning house," Thomas whispered. I blinked, and suddenly I was in front of a house engulfed in flames. The heat was intense, and I could hear children crying inside. My fear threatened to paralyze me, but I pushed through and rushed into the house. The smoke choked me, but I found the children and led them to safety. As the last child exited the house, the flames died down, and I found myself back in my study. The room was quiet, the manuscript closed on the desk. I knew the curse had been lifted, and my ancestors' spirits were finally at peace. But the memories of their pain and sorrow would haunt me forever. From that day on, I vowed to be more careful with the past. Some secrets are meant to stay buried, and some curses should never be unleashed.